Welcome to week 12 of my Dark Studies episode series. I said that really weird. We're going to get into it. So this week is about the court system and psychological syndrome. So it sounds a little odd because obviously with forensic psychology, we're going to want to talk about psychological symptoms such as PTSD, BWS. I was actually just explaining for the YouTube this entire episode. So with that being discussed, we're going to get into it. This week's discussion was how have courts historically treated expert testimony based on psychological syndromes. So the example that I used was BWS, otherwise known as battered woman syndrome. And with this, take it for example, in this case, obviously for a woman being in a domestic violence or toxic relationship per se. It can be physically abusive, emotionally abusive. There can be coercive control with that. And like, let's say that a woman goes and commits murder because she was abused for 10 plus years. Now, saying to the court, hey, this woman has BWS doesn't mean she's wrote off. Ain't nothing wrong with her. She's Coolio. She's not Coolio, okay? She's not Coolio. So just because a forensic psychologist says she has BWS to the judge and jury doesn't mean, again, that we can just say, yeah, she's good, she's not wrong, like she's guilty or not guilty because she has BWS. We're literally there just to explain the behaviors. So the courts don't take psychological syndromes lightly, because if you can't just say, hey, this person has BWS, battered woman syndrome, and then not have any scientific proof behind it to elaborate more on her behavior and how she's quote unquote not malingering or whatever the case may be. Another example would be someone who has PTSD. One of my classmates actually wrote an excellent discussion post, and she was talking about how there was a case where a man had went to Vietnam and obviously committed some acts over there, and his wife or girlfriend or someone he thought was cheating on him, or they got in an argument or something of this nature, and she went to her brother-in-law's house and he ended up pew-pewing the guy until he was passed because it had just rained recently at the brother-in-law's house, and he walked outside and there's fog on the ground. Well, it triggered him and it reminded him of the days in Vietnam because of the fog and everything there. So he had had a flashback, and in that midst of having a flashback, he had committed murder. Now, with this being said, his lawyers did push for NGRI, otherwise known as not guilty by reason of insanity, and he was able to secure that decision only because in the midst of his flashback, he didn't have the wherewithal of what he was really actually doing. And like we've said before, there's a couple of things that you guys have to prove if someone's going to get NGRI, which people think it's so easy to get NGRI, and it's really not. There's a multitude of things that you have to prove, and this guy was able to get it. So the courts do take it seriously, but at the same time, there is stipulations with it. You can't just say like someone has PTSD and then that's why they're off the hook. Like, you have to have proof. You have to have a bunch of evaluations. You have to know the terminology thoroughly. You have to fully explain why somebody has what they have and how that is brought out in their actions and their symptoms. You cannot, again, just say someone has BWS or PTSD and be like, well, that's that. Like, there's a plethora of things that you have to provide the court with in order to make that determination. We're never going to go in and with these psychological syndromes and be like, yeah, they're off the hook. Like, no, you just go in, you say everything that you need to, and then it's up to the courts to decide. So stay tuned every single Wednesday. I'm changing it from Mondays to Wednesdays for this Dark Studies series. Over the weekends, I always forget and I get kind of hassled on the Mondays. So we're moving it to Wednesdays. So look out next week for week 13 to see what's in store.